여보?
She refused his blood-stained silk handkerchief in the rain and wiped her face with dirt instead. 15 years later, she walked past prison guards holding automatic rifles, holding a confidential file stamped with the seal of the Ministry of Justice, ready to refuse a death row execution order. Some debts can't be washed away with money. They're settled through thick glass, iron bars, and the sudden, terrifying realization that the monster who raised you is the only innocent man left in Seoul. Rain hammers the corrugated roof of Cheongnam Prison's East Wing, running in black rivulets down a hallway lit only by the dull red pulse of emergency signage. A sign overhead reads Visitation, its light flickering as if the building itself is holding its breath. She walks the corridor like she owns it. Navy suit, spine straight, heels striking concrete in a rhythm that doesn't waver even as a dozen guards turn to watch her pass. Under her arm, a thick tan envelope, string-tied, stamped in bold red, confidential. Her eyes don't flick to the men with rifles. She has already made her peace with what she's about to do. Behind the reinforced glass at the end of the hall, an old man presses a trembling hand to the partition. His prison blues hang loose on a frame that used to fill a room just by entering it. The number 37,988 sits stamped over his heart where a silk pocket square once did. His face, carved by 15 years of dominion and now cracked wide open by grief, searches hers through the glass like a man checking if a memory is real. She stops in front of him, doesn't smile, doesn't cry, just lifts the envelope so he can read the seal. "Dad, I'm here." 2 words that undo 15 years of silence between them, and a countdown on everything neither of them can take back. If you've ever loved someone the world told you to be afraid of, you already know why she's standing in that hallway. Wherever you're watching from tonight, you're not just an audience for this one. You're part of the room, part of the storm building behind that glass. So stay close. Hit subscribe, tap that bell, like this video if her walk down that hallway gave you chills, and tell me in the comments, if you were her, would you have shown up too? Share this with someone who needs a story about debts finally getting paid. Because what happens next isn't just her father's execution order. It's the truth the whole city was never supposed to survive hearing. Rain falls over the Incheon docks like static, hissing against steel containers stacked in crooked towers under sodium lights gone amber with rust. Somewhere past the cranes, a ship's horn groans into the dark. Sa Woo-jin stands over a man kneeling in a puddle that has already gone pink at the edges, and he does not raise his voice when he speaks. "You told my men you'd take the West Harbor without asking me," Woo-jin says. "You wanted my throne before I was even cold in it." The kneeling man, a crew leader named Beck, 30 years old and ambitious in the particular way that gets young men killed early, tries to speak through a broken jaw. What comes out is a wet, useless sound. Woo-jin crouches, patient as a priest, and finishes the conversation the only way Incheon has ever taught him how to finish anything. When it's done, he straightens his coat, wipes his hands on a handkerchief the color of arterial silk, and starts walking back toward his car through the rain. That's when he hears it. A hollow metal groan, out of rhythm with the wind. The sound of something small shifting inside an empty shipping container. He almost ignores it. 15 years later, he will still not be able to explain why he didn't. Inside, in the freezing dark, a 9-year-old girl sits with her knees drawn to her chest, one arm thrown protectively across a woman who is no longer breathing. The girl doesn't scream when the door groans open. She doesn't even flinch at the silhouette of the man who has just killed someone 30 yards away. She simply looks up at him with eyes so still, so coldly assessing, that for one disorienting moment Woo-jin, a man who has never once in his adult life felt fear, takes an involuntary step back. She's cold. The girl says, of her mother, as if reporting a fact to a clerk. She's been cold since morning. I didn't want the rats to get to her. Woo-jin doesn't ask her name yet. He crouches at the container's threshold, the rain drumming off his shoulders, and holds out the handkerchief still faintly dark at one corner. It's the only clean thing on him. The girl looks at the cloth, looks at him, and then does something no grown man in Seoul has dared do in a decade. She slaps it out of his hand into the puddled floor. Your hands smell like iron, she says. I don't want anything that's touched what you touched. She wipes her face instead with the pad of her thumb and a smear of dirt from the container floor, deliberate, almost ceremonial, like she's choosing filth over whatever kindness he's offering, because at least the filth is honest. Something in Wu Jin, some vestigial door he sealed shut decades ago, creaks open a single inch. He looks at the dead woman, at the girl's fierce, unweeping composure, and makes a decision the way he makes every decision, with total and immediate finality. What's your name? Rang Ji-hei. Get up, Rang Ji-hei. You're not sleeping in a container tonight. She doesn't thank him. She simply stands, brushes off her knees with the same clinical care she gave her mother's body, and walks past him into the rain without waiting to be led. The mansion in Gangnam is the kind of house that swallows sound. Marble hallways, silk runners, security cameras disguised as light fixtures, and a small army of men in dark suits who bow to Wu Jin and pretend not to notice the little girl who has started appearing at breakfast in a school uniform 2 sizes too big. Ji-hei grows up inside that silence the way other children grow up inside noise. She learns to read it. By 8, she has cataloged which umbrella stands hold umbrellas and which hold something heavier wrapped in oilcloth. By 10, she has noticed that the shipping company ledgers kept in her father's study don't correspond to any shipping company that actually moves anything you could call cargo. She says nothing about any of it. She simply watches, filing each contradiction away in a mind that never seems to misplace a single number. It is at 12 years old, sitting cross-legged on a step stool in the corner of Wu Jin's study because she has been told repeatedly not to be there, that she finally speaks. Cho Dae-sung, the syndicate's silver-tongued financial advisor, is walking Wu Jin through a tax filing meant to bury 3 years of laundered shipping revenue under a shell logistics firm. Ji-hei listens for 4 minutes before sliding off the stool. That's wrong, she says. Dae-sung laughs the way adults laugh at children who have wandered somewhere they don't belong. Little Ji-hei, this is grown-up math. You depreciated the container fleet twice, she says, walking to the desk and turning the ledger toward herself with 2 fingers. Once under logistics overhead, once under capital assets. If the tax authority runs even a basic cross-reference, this whole shell collapses in a week. You're not protecting anyone. You're building evidence. The room goes silent in the particular way rooms go silent around Wu Jin when something important has just happened. Dae-sung checks the numbers, face draining of color line by line, and finds that the 9, now 12-year-old girl in the ill-fitting cardigan is entirely, humiliatingly correct. That night, Wu Jin finds her on the balcony outside her room, looking down at the courtyard where 2 of his men are loading crates into an unmarked van under cover of dark. You have a gift, he tells her. I could use a mind like yours in this family's business. Properly one day, you'd never have to be afraid of anyone again. Ji-hei doesn't turn around. You aren't protecting this family, Dad, she says quietly. You're just building a bigger cage. And one day the door's going to lock from the outside, with all of us still in it. Wu Jin has no answer for that. He stands beside her a long moment, watching the van pull away into the dark, and says nothing at all. Namgung Youngchul arrives into Wu Jin's inner circle the way water arrives into a crack in stone, quietly, patiently, without any apparent violence at all. He is a slim, immaculately tailored man with a smile that goes on a fraction too long and a bow that dips a fraction too low, the kind of humility that reads, to anyone paying close attention, as rehearsal. Ji-hei, 15 now, watches him across the dinner table the first night he's invited into the house as Wu Jin's newly appointed second-in-command. Youngchul compliments the food. He compliments the china. He compliments Ji-hei's posture, her intelligence, the honor of being raised by a man as legendary as her father. He does not, at any point, show a single flicker of irritation, ambition, or hunger. That's what worries her. A man who never shows you his anger, she tells Wu Jin afterward, isn't a man without anger. He's a man who's already decided exactly which knife he's going to use on you, and when. He's just waiting to see if you'll hand him a better opening than the one he's planned. Wu Jin laughs, an actual laugh, warm and dismissive, the laugh of a man who has survived 30 years of war and believes he can smell a threat from across a room. You've been reading too many of your law books. Young Chul has been loyal to me for 6 years. Let an old man know his own house, Jihei. She doesn't argue further. She has learned, over the years, that some warnings only land after the knife is already in. 3 years later, at 19, she graduates at the top of her forensic sciences class, and instead of the celebration dinner Wu Jin has planned at the house, she sits him down in his study and tells him, without flourish, that she has been accepted into the Judicial Training Institute, the first formal step toward a career prosecuting men exactly like him. I need you to understand, she says, that from today, I can have no official connection to your business. Not your money. Not your name in my file. Nothing they could ever use against either of us. Wu Jin looks, for the briefest moment, like a man watching a door close that he built with his own hands. Then he nods once, the way he nods at the end of any negotiation he's already lost. Then go, he says. Become something I can be proud of from a distance. She does not tell him, that night or for years after, that distance is precisely the point, that a daughter with no traceable ties to the Golden Dragon Syndicate is a daughter no one will think to watch. The politician's name is Assemblyman Ha Jun CEO, a rising progressive voice campaigning hard against organized crime's grip on Seoul's Port Authority contracts, and he is dead within 4 seconds of stepping out of a fundraiser, a single round through the throat fired from a rooftop 2 blocks away. The rifle recovered at the scene, deliberately left, though no one realizes that yet, is a customized piece with a barrel modification unique to exactly one supplier in the country, the Golden Dragon Syndicate's own private armory. By the time the news breaks, Namgung Young Chul has already been moving for 6 hours. He plants the twin of that rifle, wrapped in oilcloth, at the back of a locked cabinet in Wu Jin's private study, a cabinet only 3 people have ever had a key to, one of whom is now conveniently deceased, and 2 of whom are Wu Jin and Young Chul himself. Alongside it, he leaves a thumb drive containing encrypted offshore banking records, meticulously doctored to show a payment trail running from Wu Jin's private accounts to the assassins. Then he makes one phone call to a man he has been quietly feeding information for over a year, Chief Prosecutor Sop Myung-ki, a cold, exacting official with wire-rimmed glasses and a public reputation as the most incorruptible man in the anti-mafia task force, a reputation built, in no small part, on money that has been flowing to him from Young Chul shell companies for 3 years. The raid comes at 2:14 in the morning. Floodlights hit the mansion's windows first, then the doors go down, then 30 tactical officers move through marble hallways that have never once in 15 years been breached. Wu Jin is dragged from his bed in his undershirt, disoriented, roaring questions no one answers, and is on his knees on his own study floor when Myung-ki himself lifts the rifle from the cabinet with gloved hands and holds it up to the cameras already rolling. "Sa Wu Jin," Myung-ki says, and there's something almost pleasurable in the way he says it. "You're under arrest for the murder of Assemblyman Ha Jun CEO." Wu Jin stares at the rifle like it's a language he's never seen before. "I've never touched that weapon in my life," he says, and for the first time in 3 decades, no one in the room believes him, because for the first time in 3 decades, he is telling the truth, and it doesn't matter at all. Young Chul ascends to the head of the Golden Dragon Syndicate within a week, and Seoul learns very quickly what kind of king it has been given. Where Wu Jin ruled through calculated, surgical brutality, violence with a purpose, however cold, Young Chul rules through spectacle. Rivals aren't simply eliminated. They're made examples of, publicly, until the old lieutenants who once bowed to Wu Jin now flinch at the mention of his successor's name. The empire doesn't just change hands. It curdles. The trial, when it comes, is a formality dressed up as due process. Witnesses who spent decades in Wu Jin's employ suddenly recall, with suspicious clarity, conversations that never happened. Forensic ballistics reports, quietly altered at Myung-ki's direction, placed the murder weapon's maintenance records squarely in Wu Jin's private study for the 6 months prior to the assassination. His own lawyer, paid off before the first hearing, mounts a defense so anemic it barely qualifies as one. The verdict takes the jury 40 minutes. Guilty. Death row. The transfer to Cheongnam prison happens in silence, under armed escort, past a press pack that has already convicted him 100 times over in print. Not one of his former lieutenants, men he fed, housed, and protected for decades, comes to see him off. They have already pledged themselves to young Chul, the way water pledges itself to whatever container it's poured into. And the final cruelty, the one that actually cracks something loose behind his ribs as the prison gates grind shut behind him, is the headline waiting on the newspaper left folded on his cell cot by a guard who clearly enjoys his work. Disgraced Mafia boss abandoned by own daughter. Sources confirm Rang Jie has severed all contact. Wu Jin sits on the thin prison mattress in the dark, reads the headline 3 times, and does not cry, has not cried since before he can remember. But for the first time in 15 years, he understands what it must have felt like for a 9-year-old girl to sit alone in a freezing container with nothing left in the world she trusted. He has no way of knowing, not yet, that 400 miles away, in a locked room lit only by the glow of a monitor, his daughter is reading that exact same headline and letting it stand, uncorrected, unchallenged, because it is the only shield she has left to keep him alive. The apartment Ji-hae keeps is small and deliberately unremarkable. A rented studio under a name that isn't hers, 3 subway transfers from the ministry building, the kind of place no one would think to search for the daughter of Seoul's most notorious don. She has slept there more nights than not for the past year, and every one of those nights has started the same way. Curtains drawn, phone powered down and locked inside a signal-blocking pouch, laptop running off a line that traces back to nothing. It was never really abandonment. That was the headline's word, not hers, and she let it stand because a headline is cheaper than a lie and far more convincing. The truth is that 11 months ago, combing through a wiretap transcript she wasn't authorized to be reading, she found her own name. Young Chul's people had been tracking her call logs since the week of her father's arrest. Quietly, patiently, the same way young Chul does everything. Waiting to see if grief would make her careless enough to reach for her father or reckless enough to reach for the truth. Either one would have told him exactly what he needed to know, that she was a threat worth silencing. So she gave him what he wanted to see instead. A daughter who'd cut her losses. A public non-statement to a reporter who printed it as a full confession of estrangement. A woman who apparently could not be bothered to visit a man rotting on death row. She let herself become a rumor, a ghost, someone young Chul's surveillance could safely stop watching. And in the space that silence bought her, she went to work. The ministry's forensic accounting division isn't glamorous. It's rows of monitors and case files stacked in gray boxes, populated mostly by people who've stopped being shocked by what numbers can hide. Ji-hae has spent the better part of a year there being unremarkable on purpose, taking on cases far beneath her actual clearance, waiting for the one thread that would let her pull the whole tapestry apart without anyone noticing her hand on it. She finds it on a Tuesday night in March, for months before the docks, in the property records of a shell company registered in the British Virgin Islands. It's a small thing at first. A beach-facing penthouse in Busan, purchased 18 months ago through 6 layers of holding companies so convoluted they'd give most auditors a migraine before the second layer. But Ji-hae doesn't get migraines from numbers. She gets patient. And patience, over 4 sleepless nights, unspools the whole thread. The penthouse's ultimate beneficial owner isn't some anonymous investor. It's Sop Myung-ki, chief prosecutor, the most publicly incorruptible man in the anti-mafia task force, sitting on a $12 million property funded, layer by layer, dollar by traceable dollar, by shell entities she recognizes instantly, because she cataloged their names as a child, sitting on a step stool in her father's study, watching men she now understands were laundering blood money through fake shipping ledgers. Young Chul's shell companies, feeding Myung-ki's private accounts. Years before her father was ever arrested. She sits back from the monitor at 4 in the morning with her hands shaking for the first time since she was 9 years old, because she finally understands the shape of the thing that destroyed her family. It was never a rogue underboss acting alone. It was an alliance, a syndicate lieutenant hungry for a throne, and a state prosecutor hungry to bury whoever might expose the money trail leading straight to his own front door. Her father wasn't framed by one man. He was framed by the machinery of the state itself, rented out to the very criminals it was supposed to be hunting. She doesn't sleep after that. She builds the case in total silence over the following weeks, cross-referencing court filings, banking records, shipping manifests, anything she can pull without leaving a signature loud enough for young Chul's remaining eyes inside the ministry to notice. And it's in the middle of that work, 3 weeks before everything comes to a head, that she stumbles onto something that stops her cold. A fragment of an encrypted internal memo, routed through a prison contractor's maintenance server, referencing a scheduled infrastructure blackout at Cheongnam Prison timed to a specific date. Buried in the same thread, a payment authorization to a private security contractor for supplemental personnel, and a name she recognizes from the prison staff roster, Captain Kim Young. It takes her 2 more sleepless nights to understand what she's looking at. It isn't a maintenance blackout. It's a kill window. Someone has purchased, on the black market, a death that's already been legally scheduled to happen slowly, and decided to make it happen fast instead, buried inside the chaos of a staged riot where no camera will catch the truth and no inquiry will ever be able to prove it wasn't just prison violence doing what prison violence does. The date on that memo is 6 days away. She doesn't sleep the night she goes to the Minister of Justice. She barely remembers the drive, only the rain starting somewhere on the highway and never stopping, growing instead into something biblical by the time she reaches the ministry's after-hours entrance. Minister Baek Soo-ah is a stern, exacting woman who has spent 30 years cleaning up corruption inside her own institution, and when Ji-hae lays the case out across her desk at 11 at night, the shell companies, the property records, the maintenance memo, the payment authorization, the minister doesn't ask a single unnecessary question. She has seen enough real evidence in her career to recognize it instantly, and she has buried enough political bodies to know exactly how dangerous it is to be holding this particular one. You understand what you're accusing, the minister says quietly. A sitting chief prosecutor. Conspiracy to commit judicial murder. I understand that in 6 days my father's going to be killed inside a prison, and it's going to be filed under inmate violence, and no one is ever going to ask a single question about it again, Ji-hae says. I need emergency review authorization. Tonight. It takes 40 minutes, 3 phone calls, and a signature that will likely end the minister's career if this goes wrong. But at 12:20 in the morning, Ji-hae walks out of the ministry building into rain that has turned the streets into rivers, holding a sealed authorization stamped with the full weight of the Ministry of Justice, an override that grants her immediate, unsupervised access to any death row inmate in the country, effective the moment she presents it. The drive to Cheongnam takes 3 hours through a storm that seems to be actively trying to stop her, visibility collapsing to a few car lengths, the wipers useless against sheets of water, lightning turning the highway white every few seconds like the sky itself is timing her. Inside Cheongnam Prison, 20 minutes before she arrives, Captain Kim Young, a broad, scarred man who has spent 3 years quietly pocketing young Chul's money in exchange for looking the other way at exactly the right moments, walks into the security office overlooking the visitation wing and tells the night technician to loop the last 6 hours of camera footage, effective immediately on his authority. Facility maintenance, Kim Young says when the technician hesitates. Blackouts tonight. You don't need a working camera for a blackout. The technician doesn't argue. Nobody argues with Kim Young. Not in this wing. Not anymore. Deeper in the prison, Sa Woo-jin is pulled from his cell without explanation and marched down a corridor of flickering fluorescent light toward the visitation wing. 15 years running an empire built entirely on his ability to read a room, to smell an ambush before it closed, and it does him no good at all here because he has nothing left to read with. His right eye is swollen, nearly shut from an altercation 2 nights prior that the guards logged as inmate dispute. And that was, in fact, 3 of Kim Young's men delivering a message on Young Chul's behalf. His knuckles are split and healing wrong. He walks with the flat, hollowed gait of a man who has stopped expecting anything from the world except more of the same. He doesn't know it's his daughter waiting for him. The guards haven't told him anything. He assumes, as he's shoved into the booth and forced down into the chair on his side of the reinforced glass, that this is simply the next stage of his slow execution, a new humiliation, a new interrogation, another performance of due process on the way to a death that was decided the night they found that rifle in his study. Then the door on the other side of the glass opens, and Rang Ji-hye walks in. For a long moment, neither of them says anything at all. She looks nothing like the 15-year-old girl who cut ties with him in his study. She looks like a stranger built entirely out of steel and quiet fury. A navy suit, hair pulled back, a thick tan envelope stamped confidential held against her chest like a shield. And he looks like nothing she's ever seen before, this man who once made politicians go pale just by entering a room, reduced to a hunched, broken shape behind glass, one eye swollen shut, his prison number stamped crooked over his heart. He presses his hand flat to the glass before either of them speaks, an old, wordless gesture from when she was small, and used to press her palm to his through the car window every morning before school. His voice, when it comes through the intercom, is barely above a whisper. You shouldn't have come. They'll use you too. I didn't leave you, Dad. She sets the envelope down on the counter between them, doesn't open it yet, keeps her hand flat on top of it like she's holding down something that wants to fly apart. I went dark because Young Chul's people were tracking my phone from the week you were arrested. Every call, every visit, it would have told them exactly what is silenced next. I let them think I disowned you, so I could disappear long enough to find the language they used to trap you. His swollen I can't widen, but the other one does. What language? She slides a single page from the envelope and holds it flat to the glass so he can read it. A printed banking trail, dense with account numbers, but with one name circled in red at the bottom. Sop Myung-ki owns a $12 million penthouse in Busan. Funded through 6 shell companies by Namgung Young Chul. The prosecutor who convicted you was being paid by the man who framed you before your trial ever started. Woo Jin stares at the page like it's rewriting 15 years of his own memory in real time. Myung-ki built his career hunting men like me. He built his career protecting men like Young Chul and burying anyone who might connect the two. You were never the target of a frame job, Dad. You were the collateral they needed to remove so Young Chul could take the throne clean and Myung-ki's money trail would die with your conviction. She pulls a second document from the envelope, and her voice drops, tightening into something urgent. There's more. I found a maintenance order for tonight. A scheduled blackout in this wing. It's not real maintenance. It's cover. Someone bought an execution order on the black market, and they're using the blackout to... The lights die mid-sentence. Not a flicker, not a brownout. Total, immediate darkness, followed a half-second later by the dull red pulse of emergency hazards flooding the corridor outside the visitation booth. Somewhere down the block, an alarm begins to wail, layered almost immediately under the distant, rising roar of men shouting, metal striking metal, a riot igniting exactly on schedule in the cell block adjacent to the visitation wing. The heavy security door behind Ji-hye grinds and locks automatically, sealing her inside with her father as the facility's fail-safe protocols mistake a manufactured crisis for a real one. Woo Jin's whole body changes in an instant. 15 years of prison stillness burning off him like fog. 30 years of instinct rising back up through the cracks. Ji-hye, get behind me. Now. There is no behind you, Dad. There's a wall of steel and glass between us. The door at the end of the corridor bangs open, and Captain Kim Young steps through it flanked by 2 guards, all 3 carrying weapons that have no business inside a visitation wing during a maintenance blackout. Kim Young doesn't bother with pretense. Should have stayed home. Counselor, he says, leveling his weapon through the service slot toward the glass. Tragedy of a riot. Inmate and his lawyer caught in the crossfire. Very sad story. Writes itself. Something in Woo Jin detonates. 30 years of restraint. Every ounce of the control he clawed together in prison to keep himself alive for a daughter he thought had already left him, burns away in half a second. He slams his good hand against the edge of the steel counter bolted beneath the partition, once, twice, and on the third strike something in his hand gives with a sound Ji-hye will hear in her sleep for the rest of her life. He doesn't stop. He drives his ruined hand into the seam of the tray slot, forcing it wider than it was ever built to open, close enough now that he could reach through, close enough to get a grip on Kim Young's throat through the gap, and in this the only way he has ever known how to end anything. Dad, stop! Ji-hye throws herself against the glass, both palms flat against it, her whole body between her father's rage and the men leveling weapons on the other side. If you kill him, you hand them everything. You become exactly what they've been telling the world you are for 15 years. A monster who murders his way out of every corner. Look at me. Look at me. Step back and trust me. For one unbearable second, nothing moves. Kim Young's finger tightens on the trigger. Woo Jin's ruined hand hovers an inch from the captain's throat, blood running down his forearm, his whole body trembling with the effort of choosing. Actually choosing, maybe for the first time in his adult life, restraint over annihilation. He pulls his hand back through the slot. It's the exact half-second the rear doors need. They blow open behind Kim Young's men. Not guards loyal to the prison, but Ji-hye's own security detail, quietly stationed and briefed hours earlier under the minister's emergency authorization. Exactly the contingency she built in from the moment she read that maintenance memo. They move fast and clean, disarming the two guards before either can turn, and Kim Young himself is on the ground with a knee between his shoulder blades before he can process that the ambush has become his own. Every second of it is caught on a body camera worn by the lead officer of Ji-hye's team. Footage that will exist independently of any loop Kim Young ordered on the internal system. Footage that cannot be erased or explained away. Woo Jin sinks against the glass, cradling his shattered hand. And for the first time since a rainy night at the Incheon docks 15 years ago, Rang Ji-hye watches her father cry. The unraveling, once it starts, moves with the terrible speed of something that's been overdue for 15 years. The body camera footage, cross-referenced with Ji-hye's banking trail and the intercepted maintenance memo, lands on the minister's desk by morning and on a special tribunal's docket within a week. Sop Myung-ki's penthouse, his shell companies, his years of quiet extortion dressed up as prosecutorial diligence. All of it comes apart in a single, humiliating hearing. His own carefully built reputation collapsing under the weight of documents Ji-hye assembled one sleepless night at a time. Namgung Young-chul, arrested at the syndicate's own headquarters in a raid that leaves half his men scrambling to defect before the ink dries on the charges, is indicted for conspiracy to commit murder, judicial fraud, and the assassination of Assemblyman Ha-jun CEO. A killing the reopened investigation finally definitively traces back to the rifle that was never actually Woo Jin's. Woo Jin's exoneration hearing lasts less than an hour. The judge who once handed down his death sentence reads the reversal in a flat, clipped voice, unable to fully meet his eyes, and it is over just like that. 15 years of ruin undone by a single line on a single page. He walks out through Chongnam's front gates on a clear, cold morning, into a wall of camera flashes and shouted questions. An old man in a borrowed coat, his hand still splinted from the night, he broke it choosing restraint over vengeance. He doesn't smile for the cameras. He doesn't answer the shouted questions. He simply looks past all of it to the one person standing quietly at the edge of the crowd and walks toward her instead, and neither of them says anything at all, because after everything, there's finally nothing left that needs saying out loud. The container yard in Incheon hasn't changed much in 15 years. Still rusted, still crooked, still smelling faintly of salt and diesel under a gray winter sky. Woo Jin and Ji-hye stand together near the exact spot where a 9-year-old girl once slapped a blood-stained handkerchief out of his hand, and for a long while, neither of them speaks. I used to think strength was the only thing that could protect this family, Woo Jin finally says. You were right. I was just building a bigger cage. You're not in it anymore, she says. He hands her a single, folded document. The last piece of paper that will ever carry the name Golden Dragon. It's a legal transfer drafted and finalized that morning, signing over every remaining asset of the old syndicate. The shipping fronts, the properties, the money that took 30 years and untold blood to accumulate into a single new foundation. The Ji-hye Justice Foundation. For vulnerable youths. For children who spend cold nights guarding the people they love in places no child should ever have to be. Jihye looks up at her father, the monster who once terrified all of Seoul, the man who broke his own hand rather than become the thing the world always accused him of being. And for the first time in 15 years, she lets herself smile. Some debts, she says quietly, echoing words she said to him once through a pane of prison glass, aren't paid in cash. They're paid in what you build after. Behind them, the old shipping cranes stand rusted and silent against the winter sky. No longer monuments to what the Golden Dragon Syndicate took from the city, but the first quiet foundation of everything it will finally give back.